It remains the deadliest landslide in United States history. 43 people, the oldest 91, the youngest just 4 months, killed when a mountainside collapsed. Ten years later, the families, the community, and first responders have a place to reflect.
We pushed and made this happen because we want to make sure that the legacies of our loved ones live on.
The Oso Landslide Memorial is now complete, celebrating the lives of the victims and honoring those who worked tirelessly to recover them.
What they did for our family and bringing everyone home, and the appreciation that we have for everything they did.
The slide took Jessica Bazanca's sister, who was buried along with her 2 young sons, her husband, and in-laws.
I wanted everyone to remember my sister and who they were and why they lived out in this beautiful area of Washington.
Dane Brunner lost his sister, who was driving on the road when the slide happened.
But ever since that day 3, when the reality set in, I knew that I'm going to explain to everybody how special my sister was to me, to my mom, to my entire family, and let them know who the person she was. And doing this memorial is doing that for me.
In the decades since Oso, human activity has continued to warm the planet. Experts say that as the climate continues to get hotter, the risk for compounding extreme events rises, including landslides.
So a lot of the storms that we feel along the West Coast, all the way from Alaska to Baja, are driven by atmospheric rivers. And so these big weather systems are able to hold more moisture because of the increased temperature. So that's a big one. The increased frequency of fire is a huge one that makes landscapes more susceptible to landslides.
About 150 miles from the memorial, another part of Oso's legacy is in action at a state-owned forest. These are 2 of the 5 state geologists hired since Oso, tasked with mapping landslides across Washington state.
Oftentimes landslides happen where they've happened before, and so if we can understand where landslides have happened in the past, that'll help us be aware of where they might occur in the future.
So far, geologists have mapped around 35,000 landslides, but much work remains.
There are hundreds of thousands of landslide risk areas in Washington state that we haven't even mapped, that we haven't been able to get that information to the community, to the planners and policymakers, and we could be putting more and more people at risk because we haven't done that work.
Southeast Alaska is a region where landslides are a part of life, but researchers say wetter conditions could worsen the risks here. Experts have blamed atmospheric rivers for the heavy rains that caused 3 landslides that killed 11 people in less than a decade. The last slide in Wrangell killed a whole family.
30 seconds is all this took to go from the 1,800 feet down to the salt water down there.
Officials are now monitoring the Wrangell site for any more movement, and locals hope to map their community in the future.
Be able to better understand what triggers these events and what thresholds are involved in terms of precipitation and intensity of rain, soil composition and saturation, and potentially wind being a factor too. And so I think the second step in all this is deploying the tools needed for data collection as soon as we possibly can.
Back in Oso, Brunner and Bazanca know too well that information could have saved lives.
This is the 21st century. This should have never happened. They have the equipment to determine if hills are stable or not unstable. So why isn't that done? Because we don't want people to have to live through this, and we don't want them to have to dig through mud with their bare hands to find their loved ones, and then have that be the end of their life. We want people to be safeguarded and to be protected.
Alan Breed, Associated Press.